The idea that relationships are compromise. The idea that relationships are compromise is a line that people love to throw around, especially when they're talking about longer-term committed marriages and certainly family. It's this concept that to be in a relationship means compromise. Notice that they aren't always using the word sacrifice. It's compromise. It kind of gets at making a concession. So both people kind of sort of get what they need. Both people making a concession. What's interesting, though, is compromise. When you think about using the word compromise, to compromise something can also mean lowering the quality of something, like compromising safety or compromising flavor. And it can also mean weakening something. For example, hiring someone who had a track record of bullying colleagues compromised the safety of the workplace. Compromise is a tricky word. But in the world of therapy and psychology and relationships, we view compromise as a good thing. You may give up something, and the other person may do the same, and it feels like you find a middle ground. You feel that when something matters, when you're in a relationship with someone, that the other person, you feel confident that they will compromise, and so over time you will also do the same, and again, repeated over many years, both people feel safe and seen and heard. And when it works, it's great. Micro and macro sacrifices do need to be made in relationships. And when it's mutual and reciprocal, it works. It may sting for a moment, but it works. Well, this whole compromise thing simply doesn't work in a narcissistic relationship. It's just not a thing. Narcissistic people approach relationships like hard-hitting antagonistic business negotiation, where someone wins and gets the better deal. And so in relationships, we'll see people with these personalities can be belligerent and aggressive, and above all, just like in that business deal, they have to win. Any concessions by the other person in the relationship are hard won, so it often doesn't feel like a compromise. It feels like a fight to the death over something as small as someone who's going to walk the dog in the rain, or what friends are we going to have over for dinner, or asking someone to cut their workout short and pick some groceries up on the way home. But couples therapists and many other therapists love the compromise word. And sadly, many people in narcissistic intimate relationship do end up in couples therapy as part of some form of hope meets last-ditch effort. And then that word compromise gets thrown around. Well, that kind of talk often gets weaponized by the narcissistic person, who will constantly tell you that if you don't do what they want, then you aren't compromising. And when you bring up the recent examples in the relationship, of the relationship not feeling like a two-way street, they are likely to gaslight and bring up stuff from the past and tell you that you're the one who's petty and ungrateful, and that they are going to tell the couples therapist this week how you don't compromise. Because the compromise word seems like it's some kind of golden ticket to making every relationship work, lots of people who find themselves in narcissistic relationships and who are desperately trying to somehow make the relationship work will keep coming back to the idea that they are not compromising enough. If you ask for anything, you are the one who's being difficult in one of these relationships, or at least that's what you're told. Thus, simply just even voicing a basic need, want, emotion. Many people who find themselves in narcissistic relationships will frame that as though they are not compromising, and the word gets twisted. Over time, the narcissistic manipulation results in the person in the relationship, who's in the relationship with the narcissist, internalizing the sense that compromising is just another term for giving in and putting the other person's needs first, and ultimately subjugation. And then one day, compromise simply becomes self-abandonment, self-silencing. The fawn response, it becomes just a regular occurrence in the name of survival and safety. Disconnection from the self is the path to connection to the narcissist. The challenge is that many survivors of narcissistic relationships can believe that the shutting down of the self and the becoming what the narcissistic person demands, and the abandonment of your own aspiration, need, feeling, and ultimately self is compromise. And I understand why that is. When you do that, and the desire to stay connected to the narcissistic person is often the driver of this. But when you do this, you basically reflexively, almost unconsciously capitulate and give in. The relationship works, whatever works means. Conflict, the levels of conflict may drop. The narcissistic person may be less surly because they're getting their way. They'll still be surly. That never goes away. And if the relationship sort of feels like it works better, it's easy to equate self-abandonment with compromise. Compromise, when done right, is reciprocal and mutual. I will pick up the kids every day this week because you have a deadline. And I will schedule my afternoon appointments from this week to next week. Or I understand that you can't text me back during the workday, and so your partner agrees to have a touch base the night before, so you guys are on the same page. You may have to skip your mother's birthday party because of a prior commitment, but you offer to take on the hosting duties of a family dinner the next month and bring everyone together. Compromise. It's a two-way street. When it's done right, it just feels like the stuff of connection. But in the narcissistic relationship, the slow descent into fully cutting off from yourself and living in a numb, detached state, well, that may mean you don't question what is happening. You don't take the fight. You don't question the gaslighting. You succumb to the exhaustion and the unreasonable rules of engagement, and the world is ready to throw you a compromise parade. You don't do this because you're codependent. You don't do this because you're weak or because you don't know how to be in a relationship. You do this to survive, to keep a family afloat, to have a place in a family. Your body simultaneously senses that the relationship is not safe, but at the same time, to push back and exert yourself and voice your needs also feels unsafe. Narcissistic relationships in this way are a perpetual catch-22. But it's not compromise. Self-abandonment is not the same thing as compromise. And sadly, we have sold people, especially women, a mantra of self-abandonment for most of human histories. There are love songs out there that have ridiculous lyrics like, "We have become one." I mean, really? Not healthy. It is only recently that we are not only understanding how narcissism operates in relationships, but also what happens to our nervous systems, emotional functioning, and sense of self when we have to attach to someone who is not safe and has no consideration for us whatsoever. And while we may have martyred and praised generations of people who have stoically and probably quite numbly kept soldiering through their responsibilities without a complaint, that has to stop. No one should be cheered on for abandoning themselves in the name of keeping a one-sided relationship going. Instead, people in these circumstances need to be supported and validated so they can slowly find their way back to themselves, their true selves. This is why we need words for this, and to stop using simple prescriptions for compromise when that ship likely sailed long ago in most narcissistic relationships. That's why we need to understand the patterns of narcissistic relationships and to understand that they are different, and to stop using the same tired old advice to guide people in these situations. Self-abandonment is not a compromise. It is quitting yourself so you can be loved by someone who lacks the capacity to do so, unless you are willing to carry all the burdens of the relationship. And the fact is, you deserve better. Thanks again.